Hare Radha, Hare Radha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dharati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttavakamalam Shri Guru Vaisnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana-Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam-Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Veshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, today is the last day of Purushottam Mas. How was everybody's Purushottam Mas? Nice? Awesome. How about you, Arjun? Good. You too? Okay. Well, we have another shot coming up in just 2 weeks. What starts? Kartik. So we have back-to-back opportunities to enthuse our devotional service. So last time we spoke about steadiness, right? Did we discuss steadiness last time? We did? What do you think? What was steadiness? Anybody remember what steadiness is?
Determination to make progress in spiritual life.
Determination to make progress in spiritual life. Yes. And why do we need determination?
You have not achieved anything in life without determination.
It's plain and simple. We never achieve anything in life without some determination. Right? Somehow magically sometimes when it comes to spirituality, We expect it all to happen like that. Why my prayers are not being answered? Why this is not happening so far? Well, take some steadiness, some patience. And Rupa Goswami says, be dharya, patient, but also utsahan, very enthusiastic to make progress in devotional service. So that should be part of our engagement. Then we talked about the sense control, right? The senses. And what are we supposed to do with the senses? Control the senses. And so what does controlling the senses mean?
Engaging the senses in Krishna service.
Engaging the senses in Krishna consciousness. Right? So, and what do we not do with the senses?
Stop it.
Don't stop them. And also, let them roam freely. Freely where?
For sense gratification.
For sense gratification, right? So, Prabhupada says self-control means that one should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. So one should be very mindful where and how to engage the senses. Okay? One should not engage them willy-nilly or loosely, but actually with some intelligence of how to engage them in a way that is beneficial for bhakti. So, Prabhupada comments here about real renunciation. So what is real renunciation of the senses? What does real renunciation mean? Does it give everything up?
Not engaging in sense gratification will be that renunciation.
Not engaging in it? Okay. Yes, so not engaging in sense gratification, that is one aspect of renunciation. And what is the other aspect of real renunciation?
Use that in Krishna's service.
Use everything in Krishna's service. So there's two sides to it. Real renunciation means to use whatever is available in Krishna's service and to reject anything that is not used in Krishna's service. So not just to reject everything. No, we should use whatever facilities we have, but use them in Krishna's service. That is renunciation. Renunciation is not just, I give everything up. No. Whatever we have. But renounce for their own self-desire, sense desire, one's own personal gratification. So that is the renunciation Krishna is speaking about. So we left off, let's read at the bottom of page 40. Prabhupada was just about to speak about the tongue. We can start from the sentence, the most important and uncontrollable sense. It was just at the bottom of page 40. So let's read.
I'm not seeing where. I'm not seeing where you're.
Bottom of page 540.
If one can control the tongue, that one.
Yes, one sentence before that.
Okay. The most important uncontrollable sense is the tongue. If one can control the tongue, then there is every possibility of controlling the other senses. The function of the tongue is to taste and to vibrate. Therefore, by systematic regulation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of foodstuff offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. As far as the eyes are, or do you want me to stop there?
No, keep going.
Okay. As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but the beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes. Similarly, the ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna, and the nose in smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. This is the process of devotional service, and it is understood here that Bhagavad Gita is simply expounding the science of devotional service. Devotional service is the main and sole objective. Unintelligent commentators on the Bhagavad Gita try to divert the mind of the reader to other subjects. But there is no other subject in Bhagavad Gita than devotional service.
So the sense control, right? What happens when we don't control the senses? What is the result?
They control us.
They control us. And what happens when they control us?
We are distracted.
We are distracted. Distracted from
Lord Krishna.
the Lord Krishna, the
Make
ultimate goal.
Make the wrong decisions.
We make the wrong decisions. And what's the consequence of making the wrong decisions?
Birth, death, old age.
There we go. Birth, death, old age. Repeated suffering. Right? So sense control is very important for our happiness. So Prabhupada is saying, what is the most difficult of the senses to control?
The tongue.
The tongue. The tongue has two functions. What does it do?
Taste and vibration.
Taste and vibrations, or speak, right? So we chant the prasadam prayers every day. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is writing that the tongue is the most voracious of all senses. It is so uncontrollable. But what do we have the great fortune of having to help control the senses?
Prasadam.
Prasadam. Prasadam is such a wonderful means to control the senses. So one is encouraged to control the tongue by engaging in honoring Krishna Prasadam. Right now, Krishna Prasadam, the tongue automatically becomes satisfied and controlled. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that the senses, the tongue, the belly, and the genitals all are in one line. And if you control the tongue, all other aspects of the body are controlled very nicely. So controlling the tongue is very, very important. And so honoring Krishna Prasadam is very important. And the second function of the tongue?
Speech.
Speech. So how should we use the power of speech?
Chanting Maha Mantra.
Chanting the Maha Mantra. Chanting about Krishna. Right? The name, form, glories, and pastimes of Krishna. This yields great satisfaction also. And great utilization of the tongue. So the tongue serves as a very functional, important purpose. Prabhupada comments about some of the other senses and how they are used, smelling the flowers, seeing the beautiful form of the Lord, hearing about the wonderful pastimes and songs of the Lord, the qualities like this. We engage all the senses. So let's read the next paragraph. False ego. What does false ego mean? Someone else read that paragraph?
False ego means accepting the body as oneself. When one understands that he is not the body and is the spirit soul, he comes to his real ego. Ego is there. False ego is condemned, but not real ego. In the Vedic literature, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 1.4.10, it is said that Aham Brahman, I am Brahman, I am spirit. This I am, the sense of self, also exists in the liberated stage of self-realization. This sense of I am is ego. But when the sense of I am is applied to this false ego, it is false body, it is false ego. When the sense of self is applied to reality, that is real ego. There are some philosophers who say we should give up our ego. But we cannot give up our ego because ego means identity. We ought, of course, to give up the false identification with the body.
So very important here. What is ego? What is the definition or meaning of ego?
A sense of I am.
The sense of I am. If we give up the sense of I am, then we have no person. We have no individuality. Right? So ego is not bad. But what is bad? False ego. So if ego is a sense of I am, then what is false ego?
False identification.
Yeah, false sense of who I am, right? Pretty simple. And we even understand this in our context, just materially too. When somebody, thinks they're so much greater than they are, we say they have ego. But actually we mean they have false ego. So this false ego is more descriptive, because ego just means I am. So false ego, what is false ego?
Considering I am the body.
Considering I am the body. So what then is true ego, or ego? I am spirit soul,
I
and
am not this body.
I am not this body, and what is my function of spirit soul?
Serve Lord Krishna.
Yes, as servant, because I am part and parcel. So we have to have all aspects to have a complete understanding of who I am. Right? So I am spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, and the role of my self as part is to serve the whole. Right? But when one identifies with the body, it is false ego. And when we identify with the body, it means we are denying the idea that I am servant of Krishna. Why? Because I have some sense of pride or false ego again. It comes back to what we typically think, ego. Think, no, I am the independent. I am not the servant, I am the master. So in this false sense of mastership, one identifies with the body. And says, look at me, I can do all kinds of things. I have this very strong form, very intelligent form, I can do wonderful things. In that way, one identifies with the body in all of its fruits, and thus becomes entangled in the cycle of birth and death, old age and disease. So this false ego also has what we traditionally think of as ego, this false sense, because one thinks, no, I am not servant of Krishna. I am my own master. I am independent. But actually we see, I have no independence. We are fully dependent on the mercy of the Lord. So this false ego is very important to understand what it means. Because true ego is good. We want to awaken our true ego, which is part and parcel. Read the next one. Next paragraph.
One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother, its suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. It should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful, because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother. We do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed. As far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased, and no one wants to become old. But there is no avoiding these. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus of our making advancement in spiritual life.
So birth, death, old age, disease. This is a function of The body. Does the soul die?
Yeah.
Does the soul get old? Oh, my soul is so old. Soul is ever youthful, it's eternal. Does the soul get sick? So what obtains birth, death, old age, and disease?
The body.
The body. The Kshetra, right, as we've been talking about this chapter, that is what experiences birth, death, and old age and disease. Right? And where are we guaranteed to see birth, death, old age, and disease?
In the material world.
Okay. And where is birth, death, old age, and disease never present?
In the spiritual world.
There is a distinction. So, Prabhupada says towards the end of the purport, how we will then come to aspire for the spiritual world? When will we try to achieve something from the spiritual world?
We have faith that that is a better place and we are in a good place for it.
When we are surrendered.
Pessimistic view of this material.
One must have a pessimistic view. Right? If one is but it's practical. Anybody is looking forward to old age?
No.
Those who are just experiencing it are not enjoying it now. They go, oh, 10 years ago I used to be able to do this, I used to be able to do that, I used to do this. Anybody looks forward to disease? That's very prevalent right now. No, we are fearful of it. Our whole existence has been upended by disease. We should be grateful, Krishna is reminding us. Not such a pleasant place. Nobody looks forward to death. Birth we don't even think about. But what do the Shastras tell us about the condition of the child in the womb of the mother?
Very painful.
Very painful. Miserable. Just imagine, suspended in a sack, upside down, in a curled position, swimming in your own bodily fluids, being bitten by worms and different bacteria. 9 months. Anybody wants to sit like that again?
Not again.
Never again. But if we don't make it an objective to clear ourselves from this false ego, we are preparing for another cycle. So one must understand this birth, death, old age. Otherwise, in ignorance, one just keeps going, cycle after cycle. And as long as I am doing karmic reactions, karmic activities in this life, I'm guaranteed another body. And when I do more karmic activities in that body, I'm guaranteed another. Keep going. And when does it end? When you take the devotional service, that's the only time. Otherwise, that cycle continues millennium after millennium. Alright, now let's talk about the next one. That's very fearful. Sometimes we misunderstand it. So let's understand it clearly.
As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection, but when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is full in Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. Have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. These 4 things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. If one can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these four principles, then there is no need to change from family life to renounced life. But if it is not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Arjuna did not want to kill his family members, but when he understood that these family members were impediments to his Krishna realization, he accepted the instruction of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distress of family life, because in this world one can never be fully happy or fully miserable.
So, in the verse, if we go back to the verse, it says detachment and then freedom from entanglement with children, wife, and home, and the rest. Right? So, what does this mean? Freedom from entanglement. How does Srila Prabhupada help us understand this?
Not be overly attached to them.
Yes, and so let's discuss that. What does overly attached mean?
When you keep that person or thing in center of all your activities are directed to keep that thing or person available and attached and associated with you. Your happiness, you can relate your happiness only when that person or thing is happy.
Yeah. Right? So that's the center of our whole universe is that. And what we can say, what's the downside or what's the consequence or result of such attachment?
Impedes our spiritual advancement.
It
And
impedes
returns
our
back to
spiritual
Godhead.
advancement. And Prabhupada says at the end of it, if you have full and deep attachment, it still won't lead to? What do you say in the very last sentence? Huh?
Total happiness or total misery?
It won't lead to complete happiness. Right? So, this attachment of family must be connected to Krishna. This does not mean that we get attached to Krishna and we neglect our family. That also is not looked favorably upon by Krishna. Right? Krishna will not appreciate if we are rendering service to him at the expense of family. Why?
Because that's a duty.
That's a duty. But why will it not be pleasing to Krishna? They are also his parts and parcels. He also thinks very favorably upon them. Right? So our responsibility, our opportunity in these family relationships is to also render service to Krishna. I have been given an opportunity to associate with such wonderful family members. But I know they're not mine. They're not mine. They're Krishna's. But we have some bodily relationship. That's it. But in that relationship, I can serve Krishna by bringing us all to the service of Krishna. So, one's attachment to family is centered around attachment to serving Krishna. So, but what are examples of unproductive or unhealthy attachment? Have we seen or heard or have some experience with unhealthy attachment?
Oh, like Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah, that ended poorly, yes. Yeah, any other like examples of how this attachment leads to unhappiness and misery?
Addictions?
Yeah. When we are so consumed in this bodily identification, it becomes impossible to render service to Krishna. Right? So Prabhupada is saying that there should not be an impediment to devotional life. So we see something in Srimad Bhagavatam that's a great lesson and instruction for us. What did all the great kings, emphasizing great kings, do by the time they turned 50? At age 50, what did they do? Vana prashta. Vana means? Forest. They ran away to the forest. Why? To hang out with the monkeys and snakes and
Get some peace and quiet. Stay away from material duties
why?
so they can focus
So they can focus on
the Lord.
because they understand that their king life was that the end goal of their life? No, what was the king duties?
To keep the citizens happy.
It was a service. It was a service. But one would think, what is better than retired life? Age 50, retired in a luxurious palace with so many servants and so many family members and things like that. That sounds like, in the Kali Yuga at least, the goal of life, isn't it? But actually the great kings, the Rajarshis, they were very intelligent. They understood. The real goal of life that will give real happiness is devotional service. And the royal opulences, they are an obstacle. They are a distraction to devotional service. So they quickly renounced all of them because they know this is a distraction. This is an impediment to my bhakti. I had no attachment to it. But we forget sometimes that when they left for the forest, not only were they leaving the royal opulences, who else were they leaving? Family. They're leaving their family. Now, why age 50 they leave? Why not age 70? Why not age 30? There's a very scientific reason, very logical reason. Why 50? Why not 30? Why not 70?
By that time, the children are self-sufficient, and if they have sons, they can take care of their wives. They can take care of their mother, and by that time, they also are fit enough actually to do some focusing on the Supreme. If it's too late, then the body will not help them also.
Okay. And why not too early? You kind of answered it, but that's just
Familial commitments.
yeah.
Family commitment.
Family is still dependent, right? So when Vanaprastha ashram was entered, it was not entered irresponsibly either. Was it? Oh, my focus is bhakti. I have entered Grahastha ashram. I have young children. I have a wife I have to support. I have this. Okay, I'm leaving. Gone. See you. You're on your own. No, that is irresponsible. So the great saintly kings, they would very nicely raise their family to the point where they were, as Mataji said, self-sufficient. To the point that their direct requirements were no longer necessary. stabilized in their maturity. And then, not beforehand, and not a moment later. Knowing that in the early old agehood, if we can say it that way, there's still an opportunity to practice devotional service without so many bodily impediments. So they are eager, but not irresponsible. So sometimes in enthusiasm for devotional service, we neglect the duties of our children, of our family members. That is also not sanctioned. That is not the recommended path. One must follow their grihastha duties and care for the family. But when we see more often than not that attachment goes multi-generations, oh, I have to take care of this, I have to take care of this, I have to. And one becomes fully lost in those activities and never makes time for spiritual advancement. So this detachment must be understood in the proper context, right? This is how we have, and the execution of that is perfectly shown to us in Srimad Bhagavatam. Throughout, so many great kings we read about who had and Vanaprastha ashram often was entered with husband and wife. Both would go and practice devotional service. Now, our acharyas have commented, Vanaprastha ashram in that context is not practical today, nor is it recommended. But what is recommended? What is our Vanaprastha ashram? One can reside in a temple community, living close to the temple and rendering service on a more frequent basis. Now that some of the day-to-day responsibilities have been settled and managed. And so we are very fortunate. We don't have to live in the forest, eat twigs and berries, lie on the bare floor, take baths in cold rivers. We can take a Kali Yuga-oriented Vanaprastha ashram. But stay in some temple community and really dedicate our service. But again, after having fulfilled our duties. So one should be very mindful to perform their grihastha duties very nicely, not haphazardly, but also not beyond the point of necessity either, due to bodily attachment. Recognizing, anyways, my relationship, this is a bodily relationship. To be very frank, I can say my mother and father, they are one of millions of mothers and fathers I've had. So, yes, there's a very nice, loving relationship. But in the context of my relationship with Krishna, it should be maintained. So again, finding that happy medium. One should be very disciplined. Prabhupada gives very nice, balanced view, and we have many great examples of this in our Shastra. Okay? So maybe we'll pause there today. Any comments or questions or discussion for today?
I have a question.
Yes.
When you were mentioning about the kings that they renounced things at the age of 50, I was just wondering then why not, like Srila Prabhupada says that Yukta Vairagya. So why would they not trying to, why was this concept of renunciation coming during that time for them? They could have just used also everything for Krishna's service more and more. Can at that stage rather than just leaving everything and going.
Yeah, what was there was not theirs, right? So the king may have been in control of some great amount of land and facility, but that leadership and execution was now in the hands of someone more capable. Their children, right? by 25, they're very vibrant and strong. If they've been trained nicely, they have good intelligence, how to use it. And so now, that service is a very rigorous service. King looks luxurious life, but actually it's a very rigorous service, ensuring the success of all of the citizens. So, one is renouncing it to one who is more capable to carry on the service for Krishna. Right? So, if one can, now in our practical understanding, it doesn't mean at age 50 one should, retire from Ford Motor Company, GM, or whatever they are. That's not the, so don't get the hopes up for those of us approaching 50. That is not the practical application. But if we have facilities, you can adjust, but the general concept, our retirement age, 62 is the kind of norm for, and by US standards at least, some okay, if not then, at around that time. But again, it's why it's encouraged, people should, raise their children at a relatively younger age so that, by the time they reach, they can carry on to these next stages of life. And how that is performed, again, is under the order of the guidance of Guru. But that is how we understand it. So, different types of service can be performed. Srila Prabhupada had a great business. And then Krishna had a different plan. And that business went, whoop. And who is the beneficiary of that? All of us. All of us. Because Srila Prabhupada took to a different stage. So, Krishna has a plan for all of us. Yeah, some he may keep in some duty, some function for an extended period of time. It's not exactly on the 50th birthday, blow out the candles, your cake and gone. Not like that, but a guideline.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And Prabhuji, what I heard was the Vanprastha, one used to take Vanprastha only with the permission of the family members. Is that a true fact? Is that sanctioned?
Yeah, that's always the etiquette, that we do it in conjunction with, not leaving somebody high and dry, right? But at the end of the day, you've completed your responsibility, and still there's some objection, but there's no validity to that objection.
That's what I was leading to.
Then again, that becomes an impediment to one's devotional service. In those situations, one must look for the higher purpose, right? Just like, I'll make a very crude example, but you're driving in the car and one, animal is crossing the road. Well, then you drive off the road and knock down 2 trees. Well, you had to choose between the animal and the trees, so you took the lesser of 2 evils, right? And you made an attempt. So not always everything is perfect. So in the situation where we have different purposes, sometimes we can't satisfy the needs of the family to their fullest desire. But for what purpose? Not for our own selfish gain, but for the service of Krishna. Right? But one should not rationalize that to think they can abandon and neglect. And we see that also. We see over-attachment, well into the 70s and 80s and 90s, extreme attachment. And we also have seen this neglect. Both are there, and we should protect against both. They are equally unsanctioned and not pleasing to Krishna. Make sense?
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Okay.
How to, I know this is like explained 1,000 times, but how to give up the false ego. Because that's like
How to
just
give up the-
binding.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. How to give up the false ego.
How to give up the false ego? Chant. Chant the holy names of the Lord very sincerely, very enthusiastically. That is the only means ultimately to break this false ego. Because the false ego is a very subtle covering of the soul. But it's been there a little while. How long? a while. So we have to chisel away at it. You know, when you have a big piece of stone and you have a hammer and chisel, does the first hammer and chisel break the stone? No. Then you break a little bit at it, right? And then what do? Keep hammering. Keep hammering. And eventually it breaks. Like that, we have to chisel away at this false ego. It's not going to go away at the first Mahamantra we chant. Oh, we read it twice in this purport. We should be good. Yeah. No false ego. No, it's not going to work that way. So keep chanting, but like that hammer and the chisel, you have to hit it squarely and enthusiastically. But don't miss, you'll break your thumb. So don't chant aimlessly, wandering. You know, one hand on the phone, one hand chanting, drive up. No. Hit that chisel hard and square. But don't miss. So when you're chanting, focus. Good quality chanting. And we'll start to break apart that false ego. Because the false ego is the very subtle form of attachment, and that's why for all of these, you know, sense control. How to control the senses. Engage the tongue. Right? Why the senses still roam away? What do we do? Chant, eat more prasadam. Forget the diets. Just honor more prasadam and chant. That is the means to breaking this false ego. There's no other magic potion, no magic verse, no, you know, epiphany that's going to happen. We have to break it apart piece by piece, piece by piece. And that's why Chaitanya came, he gave one process. What was it? Chanting. Not once in a while. Kirtaniya sada hari. Always. Constantly. Then one will break the false ego.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity. I'm just wondering that we've been having like these millions of lifetimes. So just like we came across and we started to come to this field of Krishna consciousness after so many years. So there must have, with so many lifetimes, it must have happened also that so many lifetimes ago we would have done it also, but then strayed away from the path of devotional service too, and again coming. Is it like that's happening, or we don't know? But so that might be also have happened, right? We might have taken up and then again given it up. Is it?
It's possible. Yeah, we don't know exactly. What we do know, if whatever we did in our past lifetimes devotionally, that was never lost. Those credits were preserved. And wherever we picked up from, we start from where we left off. Even if there was some gap. Right? So we don't know, nor is it so important. What's more important to know is, let's not risk forgetting again. Because now I have come in contact with Srila Prabhupada, I have come in contact with this pure nectar. But if I take it casually, who knows next life where I may or may not come in contact. So if we really appreciate and understand the value of this, we'll hold on to it so tight. And we'll never let it go. Because of what you said, maybe many lifetimes ago we practiced and then we fell away for some time. And by chance, of course, our coming in contact also is based on our past credits, our Agnata Sukriti, something good we've done, which is allow this happen. It's not random. It is not a random occurrence. But now that we have contact, it's up to us to decide. Are we going to be casual about the practice or determined? That is up to us. Just like if we go to school, we can be casual about our execution or we can be very determined. The school is the school. But how each student applies it is based on their free will. Right? So we've been given the greatest of fortune. We consider Kali Yuga to be very, degraded, but I can say this is the best of all times to have appeared just after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and just in the shelter of Srila Prabhupada. What could be more fortunate? Who knows what's next? Better not take a chance. Then why we let, the idea of false ego even enter the equation? Why do we let the senses even roam 1 millimeter? You think, oh, what's the harm? Now we should know what's the harm. We could lose all of this. Great fortune we have. So, but unless we appreciate its value, we'll not protect it. So, sometimes the familiarity breeds
Content.
It becomes, we take it for granted. That we should protect against very, very much. We should very, very dearly protect letting that familiarity, we take it for granted. Even that we have this Bhagavad Gita with the Srimad Bhagavatam, we don't understand actually the rarity of that.
Going to the temple, we take it for granted.
Oh, going to the temple? Yeah. We just think, I'm going to temple. I'm going to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We should understand that with real sincerity, and if we do, then it's easy to be determined. Right? If we know the value of something, for those who have really understood the value of good grades, it was easy to be determined, even though there are so many obstacles. Those who understand the value of hard work understand or find it easy to be, even when there are obstacles. So if we know the value of what we have, then we'll be determined and also not let obstacles enter into our existence because they're there. That's why this verse speaks about the processes of knowledge. We see about all these ideas, cleanliness, steadiness, sense control, these ones we've been talking about more recently. Absence of false ego, very important. But if we take a cat, no big deal. Oh well, no big deal. It's very dangerous. And we may have another many lifetime gap. So better to have an appropriate level of fear of that. Appropriate level being the key word. So what should be our, what should be our greatest fear?
Losing the association of the devotees.
Losing this opportunity. That should be our greatest fear. Not COVID. Not anything else. The greatest fear should be, somehow don't let me lose my opportunity to remember Krishna. That should be our fear. Nothing else. Nothing else is worthy of our fear, actually. And if we shape our activities, every decision we make, day to day, moment to moment, with that understanding, why I would risk this most precious asset, then we won't make bad decisions, even in the face of great temptations. We won't make it, because we know it's not worth risking. It's something so great. Anything else? Alright. So let us chant on this final day of Purushottam Mass. Thank you very much. So Prabhupada ki, Nanda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda.